France just crossed a red line. Macron says peace demands boldness, and he's backing a Palestinian state at the UN. Israel calls it betrayal. America calls it reckless. But Gaza's still burning, and Macron's gamble could trigger a diplomatic earthquake across the West. Will others follow, or fracture? Emmanuel Macron on July 24th said that France will recognise the Palestinian state in September at the UN General Assembly. The French president announced the decision on X, saying he hoped it would bring peace to the region. Macron published a letter sent to the Palestinian Authority president Mahmoud Abbas, confirming France's intention to become the first major Western power to recognise a Palestinian state.
Consistent with its historic commitment to a just and lasting peace in the Middle East, I have decided that France will recognize the State of Palestine. I will make this solemn announcement before the United Nations General Assembly this coming September. The urgent priority today is to end the war in Gaza and to bring relief to the civilian population. Peace is possible.
Macron also called for an immediate ceasefire while ensuring the demilitarisation of Hamas and rebuilding of the war-torn Gaza Strip.
We need an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and massive humanitarian aid for the people of Gaza. We must also ensure the demilitarization of Hamas, secure and rebuild Gaza. And finally, we must build the State of Palestine, guarantee its viability, and ensure that by accepting its demilitarization and fully recognizing Israel, it contributes to the security of all in the region. There is no alternative.
The French president added that Paris wants peace in the Middle East.
The French people want peace in the Middle East. It is our responsibility, as French citizens alongside Israelis, Palestinians, and our European and international partners, to prove that peace is possible. In light of the commitments made to me by the President of the Palestinian Authority, I have written to him to express my determination to move forward. Trust, clarity, and resolve. We will achieve peace.
Macron had been leaning towards recognizing a Palestinian state for months as part of an attempt to keep the idea of a two-state solution alive, despite the pressure not to do so. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio responded angrily to Macron's announcement, calling it a reckless decision. In a diplomatic cable in June, the US said it opposed any steps that would unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state.
The United States strongly rejects Emmanuel Macron's plan to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly. This reckless decision only serves Hamas propaganda and sets back peace. It is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th.
Meanwhile, Hamas issued a statement welcoming the announcement by Macron that Paris will recognize a Palestinian state in September.
Macron's announcement is a positive step in the right direction toward justice for our oppressed Palestinian people and toward support for their right to establish their own state. Macron's decision reflects the growing international conviction of the justice of the Palestinian cause and the failure of the occupation to distort the facts. We call on all countries of the world, especially European nations and those that have not yet recognized the State of Palestine, to follow France's lead.
Palestinian Authority's Vice President Hussein al-Sheikh too thanked Macron in a social media post after the European leader announced his country's intention to recognize a Palestinian state in September at the United Nations General Assembly. In a social media post, al-Sheikh said Macron's position reflects France's commitment to international law and its support for the Palestinian people's rights to self-determination. On the streets, Palestinians told AFP that they hoped other countries would now follow suit. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned Macron's announcement.
We strongly condemn President Macron's decision to recognize a Palestinian state next to Tel Aviv in the wake of the October 7th massacre. Such a move rewards terror and risks creating another Iranian proxy, just as Gaza became. A Palestinian state in these conditions would be a launch pad to annihilate Israel, not to live in peace beside it. Let's be clear, The Palestinians do not seek a state alongside Israel. They seek a state instead of Israel.
Defense Minister Israel Katz too came out against Macron, calling the decision a disgrace and a boost to the Hamas murderers. Israeli Knesset Chairman Amir Ohana called the announcement shameful and a betrayal. Israel's Deputy Prime Minister Yair Levin also slammed France's move to recognize a State of Palestine, calling it a black mark on French history and a direct aid to terrorism. Levin, who is also Justice Minister, said France's shameful decision meant it was now time to apply Israeli sovereignty to the West Bank, which Israel has occupied since 1967. Also, US Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee condemned Macron's move.
How clever! If Macron can just declare the existence of a state, perhaps the UK can declare France a British colony.
Besides, in a statement on X, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney also pressed Israel to seek peace, condemning the Israeli government's failure to prevent the rapidly deteriorating humanitarian disaster in Gaza, and reiterating Canada's support for a two-state solution in the region. Carney also accused Israel of violating international law over the blocking of Canadian-funded aid to civilians in the war-torn Palestinian enclave. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez too celebrated France's announcement in a post on X. According to an analysis by CNN's Joseph Atterman, Macron feels this is the time to act. Leaders from France, the UK and Germany are due to speak on July 25th to seek urgent action over the new lows of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. More than 1,000 Gazans have been killed desperately seeking food since May, dozens more from starvation itself. Macron's decision is a bold one, following a smattering of European allies. Ireland, Norway and Spain, but leading the way for major international powers to follow suit. France's solo announcement also suggests a hint of desperation on Macron's part. A month ago, the stage appeared set for France to recognise Palestine. A summit co-hosted with Saudi Arabia was planned in Riyadh from June 17th to 20. But when open conflict broke out between Israel and Iran on June 13th, that plan was torn apart. The expectation among experts was that France and Saudi Arabia would marshal other allies into a joint recognition, a strong signal to Jerusalem and Washington, D.C. on the importance of the two-state solution and peace. Macron may still have his win in September if allies join France's recognition, but it won't have been without risking France's diplomatic capital and cajoling more reluctant partners. Macron staunchly backed Israel's retaliation for the October 7th massacres, but over time, he has hardened his criticism of Netanyahu and Israel's conduct of the war. Publicly, he worried about importing the conflict into France, home to Europe's largest community of Jews and Muslims. But as casualties in Gaza mounted, France banned arms exports to Israel, orchestrated aid drops into the territory, and repeatedly called for a ceasefire and access to humanitarian aid and journalists. In taking this leap of faith, recognizing a Palestinian state ahead of France's peers, the Élysée Palace is surely hoping for a domino effect of recognition across the West. With aid still cruelly beyond the reach of ordinary Gazans, perhaps it's a last-ditch effort to bring some relief.